My name's Brian Hutmacher. I'm a flight instructor here at Thrust Flight. I've been doing it for about a year and a half here. Why is that first cross-country flight important? If you think about it, up to that point in your training, you've been hanging out around your local airport. Maybe you've gone a little further, but this is the first time we're gonna take you to a place that you haven't been before, and you've got to figure out how to get there, how much fuel it's gonna take you to get there, and how in the world to get back home. That's why it's a big deal. Up to that point, you've been able to kind of figure out where you're going. Now we're gonna send you to a place where you haven't been before. You're gonna see a lot of landmarks that you've never seen.
How did I feel during my cross-country flight? I was a ball of nerves. I tried to remember all the basics, went through my checklist, remember everything that my instructor taught me. While I was up in flight, I went through all my checklists. I made sure that I was following all the instructions that my CFI had me do when he was in the plane. So when I was up there, I pretended like he was there. I was just going through the checklist. Landing the plane for the first time at a different airport, definitely I was nervous, but I knew that I was gonna be able to do it. So while I was descending to the airport, that was my first landing, I heard over the radio that there was a change in wind. So I had to make the adjustments mid-flight and I had to land on the appropriate side of the runway. So I made that correction. But luckily for me, I was studied up on how to do that and my instructors did a great job with me.
It was pretty exciting, like learning how to do a navlog and then just flying by knowing my calculations and hoping that they're correct by looking out the window and looking at my navlog, no radar, no nothing else, and hoping that I did my calculations right. Like a little nerve-wracking at first, but the first time you see your first checkpoint, you're like, I did that right. And then you make your turn and you go to the next checkpoint. And it was just super exciting to see that you were doing more than just go to the practice area and you actually had a destination in mind. So it was a lot of fun.
How is the pilot evaluated on their cross-country flight? I mean, did you make it back? That's one of the good ones. You know, we want to make sure you get home. My tongue-in-cheek answer aside, from like a FAA check ride perspective, what we're looking for is pilotage and dead reckoning. Pilotage, can I look out the window, compare it to a map, and go, yep, I'm right here, and that's where this is, and that's where that is. That's a huge one. It seems simple, but when you're in an area you don't know, it becomes a lot more challenging. Dead reckoning, we have a little bit of math involved. It's like, hey, between point A and B, how long is it gonna take to do that? And how much fuel is gonna take me to go that distance and time? And space. No, just time and distance is fine. We don't have to worry about space. But that's what you're worried about. And you will get checked out on that. So when you go for your check ride, they're going to, look at the math that you've done, usually like on a navlog. It's a little sheet of paper with a bunch of your calculations on it. And they're gonna check that and say, okay, yeah, the math looks sound. And then when you go take off for your check ride, you're gonna be following that route and they're gonna go, okay, did this person get to A, B, and C? Do they know where they are? It's something that's incorporated into the check ride. And that's how it would be judged.
Just 2 months ago, when I first got into a sim, I tried to steer a plane with the yoke, and I called it a steering wheel. Going from that to going to a cross country in just a matter of a couple of months is absolutely amazing. I never thought that would ever occur, but Thrust Flight has the best CFIs, great instructions, and I followed their instructions and I got home safe.
Mainly that my calculations were way off and I was gonna send us 10 miles off course. That was probably my biggest fear, was that I had no idea what I was doing calculation-wise and we were gonna be going the wrong direction. Other than that, I was excited to just kind of get out and fly over different towns, different cities, and be able to look out, see what it looked like out there.
Can a pilot fail their cross-country flight? Oh God, yes. There's some people that can't find their way out of a paper sack. So, no. We train people through that. Some people, I'm not gonna name any names, but like my wife. Can you fail the cross-country portion? Of course you can. Well, one, you didn't get home. That would be a sure sign that it didn't go right. But two, yeah, if the math is wrong, you weren't able to identify where you were along the route and communicate that, in a check ride would be a huge issue that could lead to a bust. In terms of real life, the consequences are a little bit more dire. If you don't get to where you want to be, you might not be able to land the plane at the airport you had. So now where are we going to land it? If you don't know where you are, you probably don't have an answer for that. Or God forbid you run out of fuel. Because a big part of this is figuring out where we are and do we have enough gas to get there. Unlike a car, we can't just pull over at the nearest gas station and fill up. So a big part of this is like, where am I going? And how much gas do I have to do it? And if you get lost, you can't answer those questions and it becomes really dangerous really quickly.
What did I struggle with during the flight. Communications is one of the most important things while you're up there flying. And depending on where you're at, you have to be on the right frequency. I think there was one time where I got onto the wrong frequency and I called out on that frequency, but soon after I made the correction and got onto the right frequency, notifying the aircrafts in the area that I was in a certain location, I'll be flying in that area.
It was amazing. The nighttime cross country was probably my favorite. Just being able to see the city lights. You can't really tell like lakes and things that you normally see. You can't see that at night, but you can see roads and headlights and taillights and big cities pop up, and then you get to turn on the airport lights, and just to be able to have that control and do that was super fun.
Did anything happen because I dialed in the wrong frequency? Absolutely nothing happens. It's not really a safety issue. I basically just went on to the correct frequency and called out on that frequency and contacted who I needed to contact. So it wasn't a huge deal, but it was something that I'd probably look out for in the future. Make sure I have the right frequencies, maybe even write them down. Luckily for me, I had good training, good instruction, and I had the ability to maneuver in that area.
Honestly, the checkpoints that I had picked out, sometimes you think that they're gonna be out further ahead of you, like 5 miles, but you can see 15, 20. And so I'm looking like out ahead of myself, then I realize I'm already over the top of it. So completely different to see that. That was probably the biggest struggle for me, was trying to find the checkpoints that I had navigated for.
So knowing what I know now, what would I change on my cross-country flight? Maybe my landings, I would say, if I could have landed just a little bit softer. Of course, I always have to improve myself as a student and as a student pilot. And I think my landing in Sulphur Springs was good and safe, but I could have landed a little bit softer. Just a little bit. I didn't plop down or anything. I was in a crosswind, so I had to deal with that crosswind. If I could have landed a little softer, I would have. That's the only thing I probably would have changed.
I don't really know. I mean, maybe trust my navlog a little bit more. Like, I was so nervous in that and like trying to fly exactly what it was, and realizing once you get up there that a calculation off by like 2 degrees really isn't gonna alter you that much. Once you find your checkpoints, like that's kind of the biggest thing. Finding the visuals, not necessarily getting the numbers exactly to the point, because if you're off by a couple degrees, you're not gonna be off by a couple miles. You're just gonna be off by just a little bit. So that'd probably be one thing that I wouldn't stress as much on as much as I did the first time I did my cross country.